If you filed a tax return late during the COVID years, or if the IRS charged you penalties or interest, there's an issue you might want to be aware of. It comes from a court case called Kwong versus the United States, and it could potentially affect taxpayers who were charged a certain IRS penalty or interest during the COVID years. Now, this is not one of those everybody is getting a refund situation. It's not automatic and it's not guaranteed, but for some taxpayers, it may be worth looking into. You see, the basic issue has to do with the IRS deadlines during the COVID disaster period. Normally, if you file a tax return late or pay taxes late, the IRS can charge penalties and interest. But during the federally declared disaster, tax deadlines sometimes can be postponed. In the Kwong case, the court looked at whether certain federal tax deadlines were postponed for a longer period because of the COVID disaster declaration, and the court ruled in favor of the taxpayer. If that ruling applies more broadly, it could mean that some taxpayers were charged penalties or interests that maybe should not have been charged. Now, I want to be careful here because the IRS does not fully agree with this result, and the issue may continue through the courts. So this is not a guaranteed refund. It does not mean every penalty automatically goes away, and it does not mean the IRS is just going to send everybody a check. But it may create an opportunity for some taxpayers to file a claim and preserve their rights. So who should pay attention to this? Well, if you filed a tax return late in 2020 or 2021 or 2022 or early 2023, this may be something to review. Also, if you received an IRS notice charging you penalties or interest during that period, or if you paid penalties related to a late filing or late payment, it may be worth checking into. This could apply to individuals, it could also apply to business owners, and it could apply to certain other types of filings as well. So what to do first? Well, the first step is actually fairly simple. It's to get your IRS account transcript. And you can download this from your IRS online account. If you don't have an IRS online account, I would encourage you to set one up. It's actually fairly simple to do, and you can do this through the IRS website. The transcript will show you whether the IRS assessed penalties or interest for a particular year. Now, transcripts can be a little confusing, so don't feel like you need to understand every code or every line. What you're mainly looking for is whether the IRS charged penalties or interest during that COVID period. So when is it really worth looking into and pursuing? Well, as a practical guideline, if the total penalties and interest are $500 or more, I would definitely look into it. If the amount is smaller, it still might be worth checking, especially if you can review the transcript yourself. But once you start paying someone to help, the dollar amount kind of matters. That's why I would use $500 or more as a good starting point for getting possible professional help. But what is the actual deadline? There is also a deadline to keep in mind. In many cases, taxpayers may need to file a refund claim or protective claim by July 10th, 2026. That date comes from the idea that under the Kwong argument, certain deadlines may have been postponed through July 10th, 2023. Then under normal refund claim rules, taxpayers often have 3 years to file a claim. That's how we get to the July 10th, 2026 deadline. But this is important. That deadline may not apply the same way to everyone. Your exact deadline can depend on when the tax return was filed, when the tax was paid, and the specific penalty or interest that's involved. So don't assume the deadline is the same in every case. You may also hear terms called like protective claim. A protective claim is basically a way of saying I may be entitled to a refund depending on how the issue is ultimately resolved, and I want to preserve my right to claim it. That can be important when the law is still developing, which is a situation we have here. So the main point is if you filed late during the COVID years, or you see IRS penalties or interest on your transcript, don't just assume there's nothing that you can do. It may be worth taking a closer look. And if you want some help with your situation, feel free to reach out to us. We can help determine whether something is worth actually pursuing. Again, this is not a guaranteed refund, and every situation is going to be different. But for some taxpayers, the Kwong case could create a real opportunity to recover penalties or interest that was paid to the IRS. The sooner you look into it, the better, especially with the refund claim deadline coming pretty soon, July 10th, 2026. If this may apply to you, get your IRS account transcript, review it for penalties and interest, and reach out to us if you'd like some help with the next step. That's it for this video. I really appreciate you watching it. If you liked the video, got some value out of it, hit that thumbs up and subscribe, and also share it with others as well. Okay? Thank you.